Alexia.
Hey, Sabrina, how are you?
I am doing well. The weather is feeling a little summery. I'm in a nice dress. My baby bump is humongous.
Yes, excellent.
All the good things.
I love that.
And life is feeling a little bit back to normal, so I am just thrilled. And the episode that I got to do with Dr. Anna Malaika-Tubbs, who I have a full-on lady crush on. I just have to admit that off the top of this episode. She is amazing. She is so impressive. She has accomplished so much. And she's not even 30. So
No big deal.
no big deal. Right. We got to talk about her latest book, which I read and loved, called The Three Mothers: How the Mothers of Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin Shaped a Nation. And this book has really caught fire. It is now a New York Times bestseller. Yay to Anna. It also, by the way, was her thesis for her PhD. So it has kind of come full circle that she is now a doctor and has written this book that shot up the New York Times bestsellers list. And it's such an interesting topic. She decided to talk about the erasure of mothers, specifically Black mothers, in history. We have so much information. We have so much accolades and holidays and books and, conversation around these three men, as we should, right? They are important people in our history, but nobody ever talks about the women who raised them. And she went kind of into obscurity to find the stories of these three really incredible women in their own rights. There isn't that much written about any of them. She really had to dig up resources from everywhere you can imagine. And it's not like she's just repeating what she read elsewhere. She really had to create this from very little research and very little background. And the idea is that there is a system in our society where we just kind of forget that the incredible people who carry on our history and carry on our future came from somewhere, from someone.
They were raised by somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. And the mothers in particular are so often just kind of forgotten in the dustbin of history. We don't give them any of the credit. We don't tell their stories or how they were even involved in raising these strong men. And Anna is turning that on its head completely.
Did she uncover any common themes in these women's lives? I mean, were there similarities and parallels? Obviously, the significance of these men in history is similar, although what they've done is obviously very different. What was the path of the women who raised them?
What's interesting, and this is something we talk about in the episode, is that they actually, all three of them, come from very different backgrounds, geographically, socioeconomically, etc. But because they all were born within a very short time of each other, I think she said 5 or 6 years of each other, that what was going on around them really shaped how they grew up, and their lives shaped how their children grew up. And so there are a lot of similarities. There are a lot of parallels. And then you also hear and read about the big differences and the things that were so kind of glaringly different in each of their lives that put them on different paths and how that impacted them and then their children. And that's something that's really important to recognize, and also to recognize what was happening in the U.S. during the turn of the 20th century for Black people, and how that impacted the story of how these people then went on to live, to become who they were. And that is such an important aspect of this as well. And one of the things that I say to her is, it must have been extremely hard to write at some point. She was pregnant with her first. And so she was already in such a frame of mind of now I am carrying on the legacy of being a Black mother. But she was writing stories of just terror. And we know the broad strokes, but to read personal stories, it's really hard.
Do you guys dive into how it shapes her as a mother and the influence of tackling this body of work while pregnant with her first?
100%. It was such a big thing for her. It was really present throughout this whole process. She's so grounded. She's so eloquent. She's really thoughtful in her responses. And I just loved this conversation. Take a listen. Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. This has been a conversation that's been in the works for a while. So to be able to finally sit down with you, I'm thrilled. And so much has happened for you over the last few months. Just even anecdotally, Anna, I have to say, from what I have witnessed as a fan of yours, first of all, you had your second child towards the end of last year.
Yeah, in August.
In August. So you have like a brand new baby. You completed your doctoral PhD, so you are now officially a doctor.
Officially, so exciting.
Yes. You dropped this book that we're going to discuss and became a New York Times bestseller all in that time.
And a TED Talk where we met each other.
Oh my gosh, how could I possibly forget? And you had a TED Talk, which I was very fortunate enough to witness in person, and it was phenomenal. And all of this in like such a short period of time, you overachiever.
It's a lot. We also moved to LA since the book's been out. There's just a ton, we like to keep things going in the Tubbs household.
Yes. So I'm really excited to touch on a lot of these things that are actually very connected. And the theme of this conversation is really going to be about the storytelling and erasure historically of women, more specifically of mothers, more specifically of Black mothers. And this theme has really touched so many aspects of your life. And so one of the things that I'll be doing when asking you these questions and kind of going through your history is touching on it as it intertwines. It really just kind of intersects all along. But I want to first ask you, you grew up in Dubai, in Sweden, in Estonia, in Azerbaijan, in the US. What were the circumstances of such a diverse and global upbringing?
Yeah, it was incredible and such a privilege to be able to travel the world in this way. My parents were both lawyers. My mom very specifically focused on women's rights, both in the U.S. as well as abroad. And so they almost prioritized the travel over the position that they might work in. Lawyers who are kind of jacks of all trades, as they say, can fit into so many different places. And so if a job opened up, whether it was like a visiting professor role or a consulting position on a project with the State Department or an organization that was trying to make a difference in some place abroad, my parents would say, have we lived there yet? No. Let's go. We're going. And so the longest I ever lived anywhere was 4 years. And that's tied for Dubai, Mexico, and Laramie, Wyoming, funnily enough. And I just was able to see things firsthand. That was really important to my parents, that we not always just believe what was presented in the news, but that instead we were able to form our own opinions, that we could develop this media literacy, even that we would connect with people across all different cultures and backgrounds, and not so that we have this notion of, all human beings are the same, but more so to say we are all very different, and that's a beautiful thing, and we should celebrate that diversity. There's always something to learn from that difference. So I'm grateful to my parents for having that insight and giving us this very nomadic experience, which was also at times hard, but I loved it.